Finally inside of the familiar building, not being attacked by monsters or dragons, her medallion silent, Twilight let herself collapse. She closed her eyes and rested on the cold floor of Rarity's boutique, just panting. The realization of what she saw began to slowly sink in. I was going to die. Twilight whispered softly to herself. She had seen it. If she attacked the dragon like she had planned, and if she rushed it and sent its sword straight to its body once more, the dragon would have hit her with its fire. The fire would have taken her life within a matter of seconds. But she avoided death. She had avoided it by no more than the skin of her teeth. That vision. That vision. Twilight's eyes opened as she suddenly began to realize it. That vision was just like the vision I had with Spike. Her body shifted, sitting up slowly from the laying position on the ground. No, they were different. Twilight spoke aloud to herself, wanting her to hear the comfort of the voice right now, even if it was her own voice. The vision of my death happened seconds before it was going to happen. With the vision about Spike, it was a mere threat, but if she had left him there, it would have been the last chance she had to save him. Twilight closed her eyes. She gripped her head in her hooves. What's happening? None of this makes any sense. She shook her head, and shivers ran up her body. She could feel the tears starting to form in the edges of her eyes. In the span of the day, she had brushed with the death more times than she ever had in her life. She never felt so terrified for her own safety, as if she did right then, the gravity of the situation fully sinking in for the first time. Before now, she had Spike with her. Before she had to protect him. Before she wasn't alone. But she had left Spike behind. She had left him behind where it was safe. I have to find my friends. Twilight rubbed her face, shuddering as she tried to hold back her sobs. I have to find Celestia. It's my responsibility. She forced herself to believe it. I wield the element of magic. I bring harmony together. She took a deep breath, calming her heart. Rarity? Twilight called out quietly, lifting her head to look into the boutique. It was only seen that she only realized that she couldn't see. The building was so dark she couldn't see anything. She lifted her hoof up to her pendant and pressed against it. The familiar light lit up for the first time. She was able to see the inside of the carousel boutique. Everything looked like it had been destroyed. Many of the mirrors were cracked and shattered. Mannequins were torn to shreds. Dresses and any curtains that lay ragged across the floor. The once beautiful boutique sat now in utter ruins. Rarity! Twilight called out, louder this time, looking back and forth across the showroom. The building had creaked softly as it settled into place. It didn't even look like the white unicorn had even stayed in her home and business had become. No doubt that no one looked at the mess, and Rarity would have been so frantic to clean it. Twilight got up from her sitting position and got onto her hooves. Just as quickly she did found herself falling on the ground. She grunted in pain as her chest struck to the ground before the rest of her body followed. She hesitantly raised one of her front hooves and lifted her body, turning her head to look at their back legs. All she could see was a hint of red running down the length of them. Though she hadn't felt like it at first, she was able to realize it now. The heat of the fire had burned her legs. It wasn't a severe burn. She could move her hind legs, and she was careful. She could walk on them. She stood up once more, being cautious about the amount of weight she placed on her back legs. She winced as the pain shot through her legs, but they held her by her weight. She gingerly walked further into the boutique, just trying to adjust the pain. The debris crunched under the hooves as she walked in. She didn't know what she might be looking for, but she wanted to try any clues that might tell her what happened to the boutique. When she had woken at her home, everything was perfectly fine, except for being boarded up and locked inside the building. However, it seemed like something was serious had happened at the boutique. Twilight didn't see any cuts or scratches that would indicate weapons like the creature used outside. She wondered if anything else had come into the store and attacked Rarity. Please be okay, Rarity, Twilight spoke to herself quietly. She swept her light back and forth, trying to get a hold of everything in the room. Her light hit the tree mirrors that she used to show off the dresses, and the ponies that would try on. Surprisingly, all the mirrors in the shop, those have seemed to suffer least damage, only have a few minor cracks running through them. "Oh hey, here's something there," Twilight spoke, continuing to keep her voice hushed. As she walked over to the mirrors, as she reached a platform, she spotted what looked like a piece of paper attached to the mirror with some tape. She grabbed the paper with her magic and floated it in front of her to read. It was still at eve of that cold winter's night. It was now just the two of us alone in the cabin, trapped in the woods while the blizzard raged outside. I kept thinking back to the events that led up to this moment, only to be still baffled as to how it had become like this. "Here, drink this, it'll warm you." Daniel Stroley's voice was washed over me once more, sending a chill down my spine. I looked up to see a warm cup of cocoa he had brewed for me and floating with his magic. I raised a hooves to gasp at the cup, and he let go. "Thank you," I cooed, though not meaning to. A soft brush formed on my face as I tried to sip on my cocoa. It was though it was once more of a young school filly with a crush. "It was no problem at all." A voice sent to me chills. The hunk stallion sat next to me and felt my face flushed harder. His flanks were so closed, I could feel them rubbing against me. I wanted to resist to him, but the fires on my body yearned for his embrace. With just the two of us alone in the cabin, I didn't know what to think. The thoughts that ran through my head was about the ways he could make me on this night. With each scenario steamier than last, my face felt like a glow in the darkly lit cabin. "It looks like you're cold. Let me warm you up." Daniel spoke softly, as his magic touched the blanket and brought it towards us. I found myself wrapped tightly within this bundle. Right next to the stallion, I sent my heart beating. I couldn't live with myself if I met a young mare go cold. "Oh, princess," his words were electric. This had to be a page from one of Rarity's romance novels. She had always enjoyed rather ridiculous storylines, from the corny dialogue and the hammed-in plot that worked around the fact of two ponies that barely had anything common. Falling in love was always some strange plot twist towards the middle, and more often than Rarity liked one of the main characters was dying at the end. Twilight wondered what the page was doing taped to Rarity's mirror. Whatever the reason may be, Twilight vanished the page into her magic. She then turned to look back at the mirror. The medallion began its blare buzzing. As Twilight screamed, scrambling away from the mirror, a large shadowy figure of a pony appeared in the mirror, a red eye gleaming to it. Her back legs struck at the fallen table, caused her to trip. She fell backwards and struck her head hard against the ground. She yelped in pain, quickly trying to reach up and grab a hold of the sore spot that had been struck. However, the blaring of the medallion snapped her back in her senses, and she scrambled to her legs, looking back at the mirror. The figure was just as gone as quickly as it came. Twilight panted as she felt her heartbeat in her chest. Whatever that figure that had been than a normal pony, it was almost as if the pony felt tall as the princess. Twilight's ears perked up as she still heard the buzzing of her medallion. She looked around quickly, not seeing a creature of any sort of triggered the buzzing of the medallion. Wood snapped loudly behind Twilight, causing her to jump once more. She twirled around and faced the front of the door, spotting an axe that just struck its way through the door. "Oh no, it's one of those things know I'm here!" Twilight, she cursed loudly to herself, backing away from the door. Her horn lit up as her sword was pulled forth with her magic. The axe head then pulled itself from the door, causing a huge gash to appear by force. The axe struck through the door once more. Splintering wood struck the ground and scattered. The axe was forced through the door once more, the hole growing larger. Twilight gritted her teeth hard, preparing herself for the creature to break through. The shattering crunch of the wood echoed throughout the boutique as the axe destroyed the door. Twilight then covered her face as dust and wood flew past her. She coughed as she stepped back further, turning to look at where the front door used to be. The metal clicking of the armor hoof steps walked into the boutique. Twilight could view the creature now, illuminated by the light of her pendant. The chunks of rotting flesh with bones showing through, the thick and ancient armor covered its body. The hefty double-headed axe then dragged with its mouth. It was certainly one creature that seemed to be a litter of the town. Every step that drew closer to Twilight, there was no way around the creature, and it was certainly on a mission. It was out for blood. The creature then lifted a large axe with its mouth, raising it to strike down on Twilight. Twilight then jumped to the side swiftly, getting out the range of the creature. The axe came striking down where she had been standing. She skated to a fast stop at the creature's side and concentrated with her magic. She commanded the sword to swing with a mighty blow down at the creature. The sword flew swiftly through the air, aiming at the creature. A sound of metal clashing echoed throughout the boutique. Twilight cursed at herself. She had struck the armor of the creature, the armor that didn't have a dent of her strike. The creature pulled its axe through the ground and began to run towards Twilight, readying to strike her once more. The creature looked over at her quickly, trying to find openings in the armor. The armor was packed tightly around the creature, the biggest openings that seemed to be around its face. The helmet looked covered in the entire body and the bridge of her nose, but the eyes and the mouth were wide open. Twilight cursed her luck at having such a small opening, and one directly within the line of fire. The axe came swinging down, and Twilight then jumped back. She felt the force of air blew past quickly from the force of the swinging, the axe embedding itself to the ground. Twilight then raised her sword and put a hoof down on the handle of the axe. As the creature tried to force the axe out of the ground, Twilight pushed it against it, keeping it there. The creature let go of its blade and lifted its head, opening its mouth wide, a growl piercing from its throat. It lunged forward, and its jaws looking to sink into her flesh. The sword was plunged straight into the creature's mouth. Twilight didn't even let up the force for a moment. The sword was driving straight through the bone and muscle that became buried handle deep inside the creature. The piercing wail of the pain as it cried out. Twilight jumped back. The creature continued to thrash about, digging the sword around its insides deeper. Blood ooze began to come out of its mouth, and from the openings of the armor, Twilight grimaced at the awful sight occurring before her. Putting up a hoof to her mouth, a piercing wail felt like it struck her soul, realizing that she had purposely brought upon this creature. With a final shriek, the creature collapsed onto its side. Blood pooled quickly underneath the creature as it oozed from every spot it could. "Forgive me." Twilight closed her eyes and whispered an apology. She then swallowed her nausea and quickly walked to the creature. She still needed that sword, but it was now lodged inside yet another creature that she just killed. Twilight's ears perked up. Something was happening. She could hear something, but it wasn't her medallion. No, this was something from the town itself. A sound she didn't recognize. It was a siren. The siren was going off in Ponyville. Twilight looked over at the broken front door. The world was being devoured by darkness. The darkness that spread open at the door began to devour the inside of the boutique. As the siren appeared, seemed to blare louder. "What?" Twilight cried out, stepping away from the darkness that was approaching the home. Twilight's pendant began to flicker, glowing dim. No, not now! Twilight tapped against the pendant. The light pendant went out, and she was suddenly in pitch blackness. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't escape her throat. The world was all shifting around her, and she could feel it. She could hear it. The fear ran down straight her spine as she heard the crawl of something around her. She was all alone in the darkness. Even the sound of civilization left. The sirens blaring, growing dimmer before growing silent. Her world was deathly quiet.